Hey friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon like thumbs up, share up right arrow, and subscribe red heart.
What happens back? One of Hollywood's most acute actors sits bottom ward with daytime television's best opinionated panel. Well, let's aloof say it doesn't end with affable acclaim and scheduled commercial breaks. Today, we're diving into the atomic battle that had Tom Hardy affronted off the actualization set, leaving Joy Behar aghast and the other co-hosts scrambling to salvage what was declared to be a routine promotional interview. This is a story about aesthetic integrity, media manipulation, and what happens back an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Accomplish abiding to hit that subscribe button and be the animadversion beneath because this adventure gets wilder with every minute. The restriction was apparent from the moment Tom Hardy absolved Assimilate the View stage. Fresh off announcement his latest abrasive abomination thriller, the British amateur agitated himself with that familiar acuteness that had fabricated him a household name. His arranger had arranged this actualization as allotment of the standard promotional circuit. But what nobody advancing was how quickly things would circling out of control. Whoopi Goldberg, confined as moderator that day, opened with her accepted warm welcome. "We're captivated to accept Tom Hardy actuality with us today. Tom, you've been authoritative some absurd films lately and your latest activity looks absolutely fascinating." Hardy nodded politely, his eyes scanning the panel. Sitting beside Whoopi were Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Tsunami host, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, each armed with their own set of prepared questions and claimed agendas. "Thanks for accepting me," Hardy replied in his characteristic growly voice. "Always interesting to be actuality in New York," Joy Behar anon jumped in, her voice cutting through the pleasantries. "Tom, I accept to ask about your best of roles. It seems like you're always playing these dark, agitated characters. Don't you anticipate Hollywood has a responsibility to advance added positive messages, abnormally in today's climate?" The catechism afraid in the air like a challenge. Hardy's jaw anchored almost imperceptibly, but his acknowledgement remained measured. "I anticipate storytelling has always been about exploring the full spectrum of animal experience, joy, the darkness, and the light. That's what makes art meaningful. But absolutely you can see how glorifying abandon affects society." Behar pressed, her tone becoming added confrontational. "These characters you play, they're not exactly role models for adolescent people." Sarah Haynes approved to intervene diplomatically. "I anticipate what Joy is getting at is whether actors accept a responsibility to exceed the impulse of their work." Hardy angry to Sarah, appreciating the added thoughtful approach. "Absolutely, Sarah. But I'd argue that my albatross is to tell authentic stories, not to sanitize reality. Back I played Bronson, I wasn't glorifying Bastille violence. I was showing the cerebral complication of an absolute person." Tsunami host leaned forward, her acknowledged accomplishments axiomatic in her absolute questioning. "Tom, that's an interesting point about authenticity. But how do you antithesis that with the commercial aspects of film? These studios are authoritative money off violence." "That's a fair question, Sonny," Hardy replied, assuming 18-carat account for her approach. "The bartering ancillary exists, but that doesn't abate the artistic intent. Look at films like The Revenant or Mad Maximum. Yes, there's activity and violence, but they're fundamentally about survival, about what it agency to be animal beneath acute circumstances." Alyssa Farah Griffin nodded thoughtfully. "I can see that perspective. It's about the ambience and the adventure actuality told, not aloof the surface elements." But Joy Behar wasn't satisfied with the adept about face the conversation was taking. "Oh, appear on," she interjected, her articulation rising slightly. "You can dress it up with all the aesthetic accent you want, but at the end of the day, you're making millions off movies area bodies get beaten up and killed. How is that different from what we criticize in other forms of media?" The studio audience confused uncomfortably. This wasn't the ablaze promotional interview they'd accepted to witness. Hardy's posture straightened and for the first time a beam of 18-carat irritation crossed his features. "Joy, with respect. I anticipate you're oversimplifying both my work and the attributes of storytelling itself." Hardy said, his articulation remaining calm but accepting an edge. When Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, was he glorifying annihilation because bodies died in the play? Scorsese fabricated Goodfellas, was he announcement organized crime? Those are absolutely different. Behar advanced back. Shakespeare was high art. What you're accomplishing is commercial entertainment advised to accomplish money off violence. The dismissive accent in her voice was apparent and it addled a nerve. Hardy's eyes narrowed slightly and the added pain lists could faculty the shift in energy. Whoopi approved to redirect. Let's allocution about your process as an actor, Tom. How do you adapt for these acute roles? But Hardy was no longer in promotional mode. Joy's comment about his assignment not actuality high art had acutely landed wrong. You know, Whoopi, I'd adulation to altercate the craft, but I'm a bit unsure on Joy's assessment of my assignment as somehow beneath legitimate than added forms of storytelling. I didn't say it was illegitimate, Behar replied, admitting her accent suggested otherwise. I'm aloof analytic whether it's responsible. Amenable to whom? Hardy asked, his articulation gaining intensity. To you, to some arbitrary standard of what ball should be. Who appointed you the adjudicator of artistic merit? The flat fell silent. This was assent aloft the usual spirited agitation the actualization was accepted for. Sarah Haynes looked afflictive while Tsunami host watched with the focused attention of audition witnessing a legal cross-examination. Joy Behar's face flushed slightly. I'm aloof asking questions that I anticipate our admirers want answered. This is a allocution show, not a fan club meeting, and I'm giving you honest answers, Hardy replied. But there's a difference amid allurement questions and being dismissive of an absolute anatomy of work because it doesn't fit your personal preferences. Alyssa approved to de-escalate. I anticipate we're all just trying to accept the broader implications of ball choices in today's world. Hardy angry to her with a nod. Alyssa, I acknowledge that and it's a chat account having, but there's a way to accept that conversation without condescension. The word condescension afraid in the air, clearly directed at Joy Behar, who bristled visibly. Condescension? I'm asking legitimate questions about the content you're putting out there. No, Joy, you're not aloof allurement questions, Hardy said, his accord alpha to crack. You started this account by essentially cogent me that my assignment is harmful and irresponsible. You dismissed my explanations about aesthetic integrity and storytelling. You compared my work unfavorably to Shakespeare, as if commercial success somehow invalidates artistic merit. That's not questioning, that's judging. The restriction in the studio was blubbery abundant to cut with a knife. Camera operators adapted their angles, analysis they were capturing something decidedly added dramatic than the archetypal celebrity interview. Whoopi fabricated addition advance to regain control. Tom, I anticipate what we're all trying to cantankerous actuality is the complex relationship amid art and social responsibility. But Joy Behar wasn't backing down. Exactly. Whoopi. And I think it's altogether fair to question whether Edition, who makes millions portraying abyss and violent characters, has absolutely anticipation through the impulse of that work. That was the breaking point. Hardy's carefully maintained accord assuredly cracked. You apperceive what, Joy? Let me ask you something. What absolutely is your contribution to society? You sit behind this board every day chattering about celebrities, authoritative base comments about people's claimed lives, and passing judgment on assignment you acutely don't understand. How is that added socially responsible than the films I make? The studio admirers gasped audibly. This had gone from afflictive to atomic in a amount of seconds. Joy Behar's face went through several shades of red as Hardy's words sank in. The other panelists exchanged glances, unsure whether to arbitrate or let this train wreck continue. The flat admirers was completely silent, analysis they were witnessing, article that would be talked about for years. Excuse me, Var's voice was alarmingly low. Are you seriously activity to sit there and attack what I do for a living? I'm not attacking anything, Hardy replied, his voice steady, but his eyes blazing. I'm pointing out the hypocrisy. You appetite to lecture me about amusing responsibility while your absolute career is congenital on commentary and criticism. At Atomic my characters serve an anecdotal purpose. What purpose does your circadian acumen of other bodies serve? Sunny host approved to jump in. Tom, I anticipate we're accepting a bit off clue here. This doesn't charge to become personal. It became claimed the moment Joy absentively my assignment wasn't worthy of respect. Hardy advanced back, not taking his eyes off Behar. I came actuality to talk about a blur that took 3 years of my life that explores capacity of redemption and animal resilience. Instead, I get lectured about actuality capricious by someone whose abstraction of address is interrupting guests and authoritative sarcastic comments. Whoopi's articulation agitated the authority of years in entertainment. Tom, let's all booty animation here. This is accepting heated. No, Whoopi, let him continue. Joy interjected, her voice dripping with disdain. I appetite to hear more about how abhorrent I am at my job from Addition who pretends to be other people for a living. The condescension in her accent was unmistakable, and it hit Hardy like a bang aloft the face. Sarah Haynes visibly winced at Joy's choice of words. Pretends to be added people. Hardy afresh slowly, his articulation deadly quiet. Is that absolutely how you see what I do? What actors do? Well, what would you alarm it? Behar replied with a smirk. You acquire curve addition else wrote. You put on costumes. You play pretend. It's not absolutely rocket science. The blackout that followed was deafening. Alike Behar seemed to realize she'd aloft a line, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked ashamed while Sunny host befuddled her arch slightly. Hardy stood up boring from his chair, and the movement beatific a ripple of tension through the absolute studio. You know what, Joy? I've formed with some incredible bodies in this industry. Directors who've committed their lives to storytelling. Writers who cascade their souls into scripts. Cinematographers who create beheld poetry. Actors who transform themselves absolutely to serve a story. His articulation was architecture now controlled but passionate. I've worked with veterans ambidextrous with PTSD who found alleviation in the belief we told. I've met kids who were aggressive to overcome their own struggles because they saw characters who never gave up. I've been allotment of films that raised awareness about brainy health, about social justice, about animal dignity. Joy Behar confused uncomfortably in her seat, but her announcement remained defiant. That's all actual touching, but it doesn't change the actuality that best of your movies are agitated entertainment. And your show is what exactly? Hardy accursed back enlightened discourse. You absorb every episode chattering about celebrities' personal lives, authoritative jokes about politicians' appearances, and reducing complex amusing issues to complete bites. At least my abandon serves a narrative purpose. Your animality is aloof for ratings. The chat animality hit the panel like a concrete blow. Sarah Haynes looked absolutely agitated while expression grew added stern. Now delay aloof a minute. Behar stood up as well, her voice rising. I've been accomplishing this job for decades. I've interviewed world leaders. I've covered important stories. I've accustomed articulation to issues that matter. Have you a fair challenged? Or accept you just been giving your appraisal about everything while accidental nothing constructive? Aback was the aftermost time you actually afflicted someone's apperception about something important instead of just preaching to bodies who already agree with you. Alyssa approved badly to intervene. I anticipate we're all passionate about our assignment and maybe we should focus on that accepted ground. But Hardy was beyond adept solutions now. You want to apperceive what's irresponsible, Joy? It's sitting in this advantaged position with this belvedere and application it to tear people bottomward instead of architecture anything up. It's authoritative careers out of cynicism and calling it journalism. I am a journalist. Behar snapped. I've been in this business best than you've been acting. Actuality in the business and being good at it are two altered things, Hardy replied coldly. Longevity doesn't equal legitimacy. The flat audience was absolutely captivated now. This had gone far aloft ball into something raw and real. Cameras captured every expression, every gesture, every moment of this unprecedented confrontation. Tsunami host fabricated another attempt at mediation. Look, I anticipate we all account anniversary others' professions here. Maybe we can acquisition a way to have this chat after advancing each other personally. Hardy angry to Sunny with 18-carat account in his voice. Sunny, I acknowledge that. And you're right, but account has to be mutual. I didn't appear actuality to advance anyone. I came actuality to allocution about my work, and I was anon put on the arresting by someone who acutely had no absorption in understanding that work. Understanding? Joy laughed bitterly. What's to understand? You bite bodies on screen and get paid millions for it. It's not exactly Hamlet. There it was again. The dismissive attitude that had started this able confrontation. Hardy's face darkened. You apperceive what? You're right. It's not Hamlet. Because Hamlet was written by one person, performed by one person, directed by one person. What I do involves hundreds of bodies working together to actualize something. Stunt coordinators who choreograph action sequences like dance. Complete designers who actualize absolute worlds through audio. Makeup artists who absorb hours transforming actors into characters. His voice was accepting, stronger, more passionate. Every blur I accomplish employs dozens of craftspeople, artists, technicians, bodies who abutment their families through this work. Bodies who take pride in their contributions to storytelling. And you sit there and dismiss all of that as amphitheater pretend, like we're a kushmong in a sandbox. Whoopi finally stepped in with authority. All right, anybody needs to calm down. This is accepting out of hand, but Joy Behar wasn't finished. Oh, so now I'm supposed to feel apologetic for millionaire actors and their crews. Give me a break. You make more money in one blur than best people see in a lifetime, and you want sympathy. It's not about sympathy, Hardy replied, his backbone assuredly exhausted. It's about basal account for the work and the bodies who do it. But clearly that's article your butterfingers of. Incapable? Vars articulation able a new pitch. You aloof British snob. You come on my appearance and insult me, insult my work, insult my intelligence, and then lecture me about respect. The personal attacks were aerial now. And the other painlists looked added desperate to achieve control. Sarah Haynes actually put her arch in her hands. While Alyssa stared at the table in mortification, a Hardy's articulation alone to a dangerous whisper. Your show. Joy, this isn't your show. This is The View. You're one voice among many, admitting you assume to forget that best of the time. And as for being a snob, at Atomic I don't pretend my opinions are added admired than everyone else is aloof because I accept a microphone. How cartel you? Behar hissed. I've becoming my abode here. I've worked for aggregate I have, and so accept I Hardy advance back. The aberration is I don't use my belvedere to breach other people bottom ward for sport. The restriction in the flat had able a breaking point. What started as a accepted promotional interview had devolved into the most explosive battle in The View's history. Both Hardy and Behar were standing now, adverse anniversary added across the table like gladiators in an arena. Whoopi Goldberg's articulation cut through the hostility with the ascendancy of someone who'd apparent it all. All right, that's enough. Both of you charged to sit bottom ward and take a breath. But Joy Behar was beyond backing down. No, Whoopi. I'm not going to sit actuality and be angered by some actor who thinks he's bigger than everyone else. Tom, you appetite to talk about platforms. You use castigation to glorify abandon and again accept the nerve to address me about responsibility. Hardy's beam was Absathian and sharp. Glorify violence. Joy. You've clearly never absolutely watched any of my films. You've fabricated up your apperception based on what? Movie posters. Trailers. You're criticizing assignment you haven't even bothered to understand. I don't charge to watch every agitated cine to apperceive what they're selling. Behar accursed back. Blood, guns, and testosterone. That's your brand, isn't it? Sarah Haynes finally began her voice. Desperation evident in her tone. Can we amuse just take a footfall aback here? This is getting way too personal. Hardy angry to Sarah. His articulation abatement slightly. Sarah, I appreciate that you appetite to accumulate things civil, but this chock-full actuality about civility aback Joy abstively to advance not just my work, but my appearance and intelligence. Tsunami host nodded grimly. Tom's right. This conversation has absolutely aloft some lines. Behar whirled on Sunny. Oh, so now you're taking his side. This is absolutely what I'm talking about. Hollywood comes in here with their agreeableness and their accents, and suddenly anybody forgets to ask the hard questions. Adamantine questions. Hardy's voice rose incredulously. Joy, you haven't asked a distinct adamantine question. You've fabricated accusations. You've been dismissive. You've been condescending, but you haven't asked annihilation that resembles journalism. Alyssa Farah Griffin approved one added time to salvage the situation. Look, I anticipate we're all passionate about our work, and maybe that affection is accepting the bigger of us here. Passion. Behar scoffed. This isn't passion. This is arrogance. Pure and simple. He can't handle being challenged, so he attacks me personally. Hardy's accord assuredly shattered completely. Challenged. Joy. You appetite to know what a absolute claiming looks like? Try spending 6 months' acquirements to fight like a captive for Bronson. Try gaining 40 pounds of beef and again accident it again for a role. Try a live 18-hour days in barbarous altitude to acquaint a story that agency article to people. His voice was architecture to a acme now. Try accommodating with directors, writers, and added actors to create something that didn't abide before. Try taking risks with your career to assignment on projects that amount instead of taking the safe I'll every distinct time. Oh, please. Behar formed her eyes. You're not abating cancer. You're authoritative movies. And you're not alteration the world. You're hosting a allocution show. A fair shot back. But at Atomic I don't pretend my work is added important than everyone else's. Whoopi stood up, her voice carrying final authority. Okay, that's it. We're activity to commercial. But the damage was already done. Hardy befuddled his head, his abhorrence evident. You know what, Whoopi? Don't bother. I'm done here. He started to abolish his microphone, but Joy Behar wasn't finished. Oh, what a surprise. The tough guy can't handle a little criticism, so he's active away. Hardy froze, his hand on the microphone clip. Slowly, he turned back to face Bay. I've been in this industry for over 2 decades. I've been criticized by people who absolutely apperceive what they're talking about. I've been advised by professional critics who understand storytelling. I've been challenged by directors who advance me to be better. He took a footfall afterpiece to the panel. But I've never in all that time encountered someone so thoroughly committed to ignorance as you are appropriate now. You don't appetite to accept a conversation. You want to accept a monologue. You don't want to apprentice anything. You appetite to prove you're right. You don't appetite to engage with ideas. You appetite to breach them down. There. Flat was asleep silent. Every camera was focused on Hardy as he connected his devastating assessment. You allocution about social responsibility, but what's socially amenable about your approach to discourse? You interrupt, you dismiss, you attack, you about face every conversation into a fight, and again act surprised a back body's action back. Sarah Haynes looked like she capital to disappear into her chair. Sunny host was shaking her arch sadly. Alyssa Farah Griffin stared at the table, clearly wishing she was anywhere else. Behar's face was ablaze with acrimony and embarrassment. You don't apperceive anything about me or what I've accomplished. I know enough. Hardy replied coldly. I know that you've had every opportunity today to accept a elusive conversation about art, about storytelling, about the responsibility of entertainers in society. Instead, you chose to be petty, dismissive, and insulting. He finished removing his microphone and placed it on the table. You appetite to apperceive what's really irresponsible. It's crumbling a platform like this. It's accepting the opportunity to appoint with different perspectives and allotment instead to grandstand and attack. Whoopi fabricated one last attempt. Tom, amuse, let's just take a breach and reset. Hardy looked at Whoopi with 18-carat respect. Whoopi, I have annihilation but account for you and what you've accomplished. This isn't about you or the show. This is about someone who's added absorbed in being right than actuality fair. He angrier back to Joy Behar for his final words. Joy, I hope anytime you apprehend that your role here gives you the ability to elevate conversations, not abort them. You could use your Belvedere to accompany out the best in your guests, to analyze ideas, to absolutely acquaint your admirers about things that matter. His articulation agitated a note of sadness. Now, instead, you've chosen to use it to breach bodies down. That's not journalism. That's not entertainment. That's aloof cruel. And frankly, your admirers deserves better. With that, Hardy angry and walked toward the exit. The flat remained frozen in abashed blackout as the sound of his footsteps echoed through the space. Behar assuredly began her voice, but it came out as a anemic protest. This is ridiculous. His actuality completely unreasonable. But alike as she spoke, it was bright that the action had gone out of her. The added painlists remained silent, processing what they'd just witnessed. Sarah Haynes was the aboriginal to speak. Her articulation almost aloft a whisper. That was intense. Tsunami host nodded slowly. I've never apparent annihilation like that in all my years in television. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked shaken. I feel like we all charged to apprentice something from this. Whoopi sat aback bottomward heavily, her announcement thoughtful. Well, that certainly wasn't what anyone expected when they acquainted in today. Joy Behar remained standing, her face a admixture of anger and article that ability except bin shame. He had no appropriate to allege to me that way. But the blackout that followed her words batten volumes. Alike she seemed to apprehend that whatever had just happened, it was added than aloof a disagreement amid a host and a guest. As the cameras assuredly chock-full rolling, the flat remained in abashed silence. What had started as a simple promotional interview had become article abundant more significant, a moment that would be dissected and discussed for years to come. The battle amid Tom Hardy and Joy Behar had exposed something added about the attributes of discourse, respect, and responsibility in entertainment. It had apparent what happens aback two able personalities clash over axiological questions about art, criticism, and animal dignity. And now, as the dust acclimatized and the participants approved to action what had just occurred, one affair was clear. This was a moment that would ascertain how both the bedfellow and the host would be remembered, not aloof by the studio audience, but by anybody who witnessed this aberrant breakdown of civility on daytime television. So, what do you think? Was Tom Hardy justified in his response to Joy Behar's questions, or did he cantankerous the band with his personal attacks? Bead your thoughts in the comments below, and accomplish abiding to subscribe for added belief like this one. The apple of celebrity interviews is abounding of hasty moments, and will be actuality to breach them all bottomward for.
Thank you for watching my video.